Hi guys, it's Daniela again and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, hello. So for today's video, I'm going to be doing this eyeshadow tag that I believe was invented or created by Allie Glines, and then Jessica Bron also uploaded her version. I actually watched both Allie's and Jessica's, and I actually really enjoyed the video, and I love the concept of talking about eyeshadow palettes and not just doing tutorials and hauls and stuff, and actually talking about the palettes I have, my collection and stuff. And yeah, I just really enjoyed their video, so I thought I would do my own. I also want to do another version of this. Jessica Bron just uploaded another version of this where she spoke about her lip products, so I thought I could do that but for like face and stuff, because I have a lot of like face products. So let me know if you enjoyed this kind of video and if you would like me to do other parts of my collection with the same kind of question and tag. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed today's video, and let's get started. Hi guys, so as I said in my intro, this is very much influenced by Jessica Bron and Allie Glines. I really enjoyed their video, so I knew that I wanted to create my own version of it. So the first kind of point I would say is, what is your newest eyeshadow palette? So my newest eyeshadow palette is I Love Revolution Nudes Mini Eyeshadow Palette. So it looks like this. It's just a really neutral, everyday kind of palette, and that's why I got it, because it's so small and it's neutral. So I've only used this about twice because it is such a new palette, but I do actually like it. I like the colour scheme in there. I wish these two colours weren't in there, but it is what it is. And yeah, this is my newest palette in my collection. Okay, so the next thing is my oldest palette. So my oldest palette by far, the one that I still have in my collection, is the Naked Free by Urban Decay. So it looks like this. They're like cult favourites, so you probably have definitely seen this. That was an eyeshadow that literally just popped out. And if I'm honest, I only keep it because it was like my first high-end palette. To be honest, I'm not really a fan of the formula of this eyeshadow palette. I really don't like how the pans are so small. It's really hard to actually get a brush in there. And I just don't really use it a lot. I literally never reach for it. Not because it's like an absolutely terrible palette, because it's not. It's just because I don't really like these colours on me anymore, so I just don't reach for it. I'm not really into like pinks and mauves as much as I used to be. I used to love those colours on me, and now I'm just much more of like a brown and a neutral kind of girl. So for my most expensive palette, at first I thought it was going to be the Francation or the ABH palette, but it wasn't. I completely forgot about this palette here. So this is the Sephora Pro Pigment palette in Editorial. So it looks like this. This was huge a couple years ago. So this is what it looks like. And I believe this is like $60 something. So I believe it was probably like 50 something pounds for me. I can't remember how much I specifically paid for it. It is a really good palette. I actually really do like it. I have used a lot of it. I actually really like having this in my collection because there are a lot of mattes in there, and it is a palette that I do like going into when I want a specific look, like especially if I want like a pink look. I do come into this palette because I know it's got really good pinks in here. To be honest, I only really ever reach for the mattes if I'm going into this palette. To me, it's kind of a waste of money because I don't ever use any of the shimmers, only really the mattes. I have used the shimmers in the past, but not like as much as I've used the mattes. And yeah, it is a really good palette. It's just super expensive, and it's definitely my most expensive palette in my collection. So my most affordable palette is definitely this one here. So this one is the I Love Revolution Nudes Mini palette. This one cost me, if I'm not mistaken, less than a £5. And yeah, it's actually a really good palette. Okay, so the next thing is my everyday eyeshadow palette. I don't wear makeup every day, so I definitely don't wear eyeshadow every day. So I don't actually have an everyday palette. I said everyday a lot then. If I was to wear makeup every day, I think my everyday palette would be the Nude Medium palette by Huda Beauty, just because it is such a small palette and it has a lot of shades. If I was going to use eyeshadow every day, I would probably just end up using this and maybe this all over the lid and call it a day. I wouldn't be using like 3 to 4 eyeshadows every day on my eyes. So yeah, if I was going to do my makeup every day, I generally just think I would reach for this one, because I could create loads of looks with this while still being able to use like 1 shade or 2 shades and creating a look with it as well. So I wouldn't need such a big palette if I'm only going to use 1 or 2 shades out of there. So my most colourful palette is definitely the NYX Bright palette. So it looks like this. I use this a lot when I want a bright eyeshadow look. It's actually my go-to eyeshadow palette for bright looks, just because I really like the formula. I know how it works. As you can see, I've hit pan on the purple and the green. The formula is a little bit more powdery than what I would like, But to me, I don't really mind that because I know what kind of formula I'm getting out of this. I know it's going to be pigmented and I know it's going to blend. And I've hit pan because I've actually used these shadows. So yeah, I'm really happy I have this in my collection. It's a really good palette. And if you want like a bright eyeshadow palette and you don't want it to be really massive and just too many colours, I would highly recommend this one. I don't have a lot of bright eyeshadow palettes because I have this one, and because I have this one, I don't feel the need to buy any more. It is a mostly matte palette, but there are some shades that have shimmer in it, but you can't really see that once you've blended it out. So yeah, it is a really good palette and I've very much enjoyed using this. My smallest palette is this one here. So this is the Wet n Wild Art in the Streets palette. I've had this for years. This is actually a really nice colourful palette and I actually really enjoy the formula. I just never use it because I forget it. Because it's so small, it just kind of hides away in my collection. And I hope they still have this. I hope it's not been discontinued. I will look it up before I upload this video. But yeah, it is a really good palette and it's my smallest palette, and that's probably why I don't use it as much, because I just never see it. So my biggest palettes in my collection are definitely by Morphe. I have two like old school kind of palettes that they have, and then I have the Jaclyn Hill and Morphe palette. So this is definitely my biggest palette, and this is a palette that I actually really like and I love creating looks out of it. I don't create too many looks out of it and I don't use it as often as I would like because of the size. I've just come to the conclusion that I don't really like big eyeshadow palettes. I just find myself not reaching for it because it is right at the bottom of my collection. But it is a really good eyeshadow palette. I actually do like this. And the looks I have created with this palette, I've really enjoyed. Recently, I have been putting it on my table and I've been forcing myself to use it because it's been on my table, if that makes sense. Where if I put it away in my drawers, I will never see it and I'll never use it. The next is eyeshadow palettes that I've had the best memory with. So this one I actually really struggled with because I couldn't figure out what memories came with what palettes. I have a really bad memory anyway, so trying to figure out what memory or what thing I did with an eyeshadow palette was really difficult. However, I did figure out that my most favourite memory of an eyeshadow palette is the Dose of Colours Desi and Katie Francation palette, because I was so excited to get that palette. Like, I've never been as excited to get a palette as I was for that one. I was so happy when Beauty Bay bought the Francation palette on their website because I wasn't able to get their other collection, the first collection that they dropped. I really wanted the lippies and the palette, but I couldn't get that. So when they dropped this palette, I was like, yes, I can't wait to get that. I've also worn this palette to a lot of important events. I wore this to my friend's wedding where I was a bridesmaid. So I know that this palette just has such good memories behind it because I know how loved it is in my collection, and it is my most loved palette. I don't know what it is about this palette. What I do, the formula is amazing. I love the colour scheme. I love the shimmers. I love the mattes. It's just a really good palette. I haven't even showed you it. So this is it. So this is by Dose of Colours, Desi and Katie, the Francation palette. Mine is a little bit beaten up because I have used it so many times and I've travelled with it. And some of the shades are actually shattered. So this colour here, as you can see, I've hit pan. This is a colour Necessary and I love this colour on my crease. I love Just a Kiss. Oh my god. They need to release this as a single because I want a backup. I love the mattes in here. I rarely ever use these two colours here just because they are quite dark and I don't really wear a lot of dark looks. But the green and the pink I rinse when I want those kind of colours. And yeah, I've worn it to really important events just because I know the formula, I know the looks that I like creating with that palette, and it's never going to let me down. And when I put Just a Kiss on, everyone asks me what I have on my eyes. And yeah, it is my most loved and my best memory kind of eyeshadow palette. Okay, so next are palettes that are worth the hype. So for me, in general, Colourpop, I've only actually used two Colourpop palettes. So it's this one here and this one here. So this is the Sweet Talk palette, and then this one is Dream Street palette, which is a collaboration with Kathleen Lights. I've heard so many people talk about Colourpop eyeshadow palettes in such a good, positive way. And to me, they are definitely worth the hype. They're not expensive at all. And they're such good formulas. I love the packaging. Like, the packaging of these two palettes is stunning. Especially the Sweet Talk one. There's something about it that really just draws me in. I love the way it just looks in the eyes. I love the looks that I create with it. So yeah, to me, they're worth the hype. And they're worth such positive reactions and reviews because they are such an affordable brand. And the eyeshadows are such good formulas that they are worth the hype, in my opinion. Okay, so an eyeshadow palette that I think is not worth the hype, or wasn't worth the hype, because no one talks about this palette anymore. But back in the day, everyone and their mums and their grands and their aunties and their dogs were talking about this palette. So this is the Tarte Tartelette in Bloom palette. So this is what it looks like. Packaging, stunning. I love the packaging. This is beautiful. And then inside, it's just lackluster. So mine is actually shattered, so I can't really show you what it looks like. But to me, the way everyone hyped up this palette and the formula and the packaging was stunning, I was like, yeah, this is going to be an absolutely amazing palette. And to me, it's just really hyped up. So I've only hit pan on one shade, and that's Smarty Pants, because it's like a neutral kind of crease shade for my skin tone. And all the other shades are actually just shattered just from accidentally dropping it. This is a very fragile palette. If you drop it, it will smash. Where with other palettes in my collection, I can drop them and they won't really smash that easily. There's something about the formula of this palette that it's really hard to work with. And I feel like there's been 1 or 2 other people on YouTube who've said that as well. And there's just something about that palette that just makes me not use it. It's the formula, it's the colour scheme. I just don't really ever reach for it. The packaging is stunning, but it's just not a palette that I reach for. And in my opinion, is extremely overhyped and not worth the hype. My favourite palette from my favourite brand would be the Revolution Soph Extra Spice palette. This palette is absolutely stunning. I would say this is definitely my favourite Revolution palette that they've ever released and that I've ever bought. This one is just a really, really good palette. I like the colour scheme and the formula is really good. Revolution's formulas, I actually really enjoy it. I like the brand. I enjoy a lot of their products. For most used eyeshadow palette, this is difficult because, as I said, I don't do eyeshadow every day. I don't wear makeup every day. So when I am wearing makeup, usually I would have 2 to 3 eyeshadow palettes just open and see what I create. I usually kind of know what kind of looks I want to create, but sometimes I just want to play. So the palettes I usually have in front of me, the first one is definitely the Francation palette. Like, this is always out. The second one I would say is the Huda Beauty Nude palette, just because I like the formula in here. I know that I like the colours, so I just picked this up, and it's a small palette as well. And recently I have been using a lot of the BH Desert Oasis palette. So this is a newish palette to my collection, but I really enjoy having this out in my collection because it has so many colours and a lot of highlights, so I can do like my eyeshadow and then my highlight in here as well. And because it is a new palette, I've actually just had this out so I know to use it. Because it is on the bigger side, I need to have it out on my table so I know to use it. So in Jessica's video, she did also mention her most underrated palette and her like favourite limited edition palette. However, looking at my collection, I can't really figure out a palette for those 2 categories, so I just thought I wouldn't mention it. So yeah guys, that is the end of this video. I've spoken to you about most of my eyeshadow palettes. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you would like me to do this for like my foundations. I definitely have enough foundations to do this video for. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed today's video. I really enjoyed just sitting down and talking about makeup and formula and what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy. So yeah guys, I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, I'd love for you to subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you next time. Bye guys.